Get ready for the big revival, the real estate revival, that is. Now on 77 WABC, your New York weekend.
Get ready for the big revival.
It's Rand on Real Estate with Greg Rand.
Welcome to the Big Real Estate Revival. My name is Greg Rand. I'm your host on 77 WABC and WABCRadio.com. Very excited to be here on a beautiful Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all you moms out there. There's a couple of special ones out there for me. My mom is out there someplace hopefully listening. Love you, Mom. Thanks for everything. And my beautiful wife, Leah. Happy Mother's Day to you also. And to everybody out there, this is one of my favorite days of the year. I'm not a mom, obviously, but it's special because, you know, nothing great ever happened in this world if a mom wasn't involved. You know, I don't just mean the obvious biological reason because nobody'd be born otherwise, but anything great that ever happened, any wonderful invention, any disease cured, man on the moon, no matter what it was, it took somebody who was self-confident, inspired, motivated, intelligent. None of those things happen without a mom out there making sure the kids are raised right and everything. So it's a beautiful day. I'm glad the mom's got wonderful weather. I'm Greg Rand. This is Rand on Real Estate. We're going to talk all about creating wealth, securing your future using real estate. We're going to do something special this time. We have a new sponsor called Jacksonville Wealth Builders, a company who found me, and I was very happy they did. I spoke about their marketplace on the air, I guess a couple of months ago, and talked about them on TV. And they contacted me and told me what they do. And I think it's a service that I want to share with you today because I think it fits for a lot of people in the listening audience. Most of the people, chances are you're within the New York metro area. You could be hearing us from anywhere in the world on WABCRadio.com. But if you're in the New York area, it's kind of hard to spend $100,000 and buy a single-family home in New York, right? You can't get it for those kinds of prices. But there are opportunities all around the country. And my job, I make my living scouring the country for opportunities, analyzing markets, researching opportunities for clients of mine and for you folks in the listening audience. And people a lot of times ask me, what's my favorite? You know, and I like a lot of them, believe me. There's a lot of places around this country that I think are phenomenal places to invest your capital. But every list has to have a number one, right? Every top 10 list has got to have a number one. And my number one is Jacksonville, Florida. And I'm going to tell you all about that again today, but we're going to approach today as a kind of a learning session on exactly how to do it. Because a lot of the feedback that I get from this show, I really enjoyed the feedback, the calls that I get from you all. And by the way, we're taking your calls this hour at 800-848-WABC. That's 800-848-9222. The calls are great. The emails that I get after the shows are great. But there's a common theme from a lot of the feedback, and that is, hey, Greg, we love the show, but you kind of leave us wanting more. You know, like you get us all motivated and psyched up, and we believe, but we don't know how to do it. We don't know how to go about it, and hearing about it for 45 minutes to an hour on the radio is great, but it's not actually tangible enough for us to take action, and that's what changes today. With Jacksonville Wealth Builders and the analysis of Jacksonville, Florida, we're going to put you in a position where I'm going to research it and share with you how I research it. I'm going to tell you where to go do your own research because you know what? I don't want you taking my word for anything. I think it's high time that we all become masters of our own, destiny here. And so I'm going to show you where to go. I posted a bunch of links on my website to share the research that I'm going to share with you today so you can see visually the kind of things that I'm talking about. But at the end of the day, I'm going to tell you exactly how to go about it. And in the, I think, second or third segment, we're actually going to talk about individual properties and what kind of numbers they produce in terms of returns. Now, I know what you're thinking. Don't touch that dial. I'm not going to talk a lot about numbers. I'm not going to bore you. I promise I'll make this fun and fast-paced. But I want you to come out of here saying, you know what, that's what I'm looking for, Greg. I'm looking for marching orders. I'm looking for something that I can actually do. And that's what we're going to focus on today. I'll tell you a little bit about Jacksonville Wealth Builders. They have a website called Investment Property Jacksonville. Investment Property Jacksonville. And you can reach them at 904-677-6777. I'll give that phone number out a couple of times this hour. They've got there a 16-page guide and an audio CD set they can send you for free to help you take this educational process one step further. So we'll revisit that a couple times this hour. But here's, let me start by kind of setting the stage here. The world is going crazy, right? And when the world goes crazy, people crave something they can control. They crave something stable. I remember back after 9/11, I was running a real estate company with my brothers and my mom back then, and the real estate world froze, right? After 9/11, nobody was buying a house. So September, October, nobody bought a house. I'm talking nationwide, the numbers just froze. People said, I'm sitting still and waiting to see if another shoe is going to drop. They didn't know what to do. But by November, December, it's like the freeze thawed out. It was a very interesting phenomenon. You recall back then, the president and the mayor, they said, go out to dinner, go out to the movies, get on that airplane and go on vacation. They told us that by living the lives we wanted to live, by following through on our dreams, we are fighting back in a way, right? And that includes buying a home. Now, if you recall, back then we were just a couple of years after the tech stock bubble. And so that was a fresh reminder of how wacky Wall Street is. A fresh reminder of how you can't trust those guys. I like them. I know a lot of them. They're nice guys. They don't mean to do any harm, but sometimes they do. They get all frothy and crazy over something. And then we had fresh examples back then about how you really can't park your money with some of those guys because they might lose it on you. And I think we've just been treated to another fresh example of Wall Street gone amok. And we've got government running amok, and we've got, the world goes sideways. People crave something stable, something they can control, something they can rely on, and sleep at night knowing it's going to be there when they wake up. And inevitably, a lot of people's minds turn to real estate because that is as tangible as it gets, right? And we all know somebody out there. We all have our own Uncle Richie, all right? My Uncle Richie, who I really hope is listening out there. If not, I'll send him the audio. Uncle Richie lives in a community in Southwest Florida. It's a yacht club community. It's a golf course community, gated. He lives amongst rock stars, literally. One of the band members of AC/DC lives in his neighborhood. And neurosurgeons and CEOs and everything else. Uncle Richie lives down there with people at the, who have really achieved phenomenal things in their life, and they live in this playland for grown-ups, right? Well, Uncle Richie was a fireman, all right? Probably the most admirable profession out there, but those guys aren't exactly overpaid, right? So they are motivated by saving lives. They're the kind of people that I guess one day you realize that you're just brave enough to run into a fire, run into a burning building, so you become a fireman like my Uncle Richie, and you work for 20 or 30 years, whatever it is. He became a lieutenant in his firehouse in Staten Island. But now he's retired in a place with rock stars. So how does that happen? Well, it happened because Uncle Richie bought houses along the way. That's what he did. He also saved well, and he was very responsible. But the thing that he did, the entrepreneurial thing that he did that put him in a position to live amongst rock stars was buy houses in Brooklyn and Staten Island along the way. And it's beautiful because we all have an Uncle Richie. Maybe you're not related to one, but you know people who just picked up a couple of houses and sat on them forever, right? And then later on in life, they were paid off and you were living on income where you could sell them and cash them in. It's an amazing American success story. It doesn't really happen this way anyplace else in the world, where you love your country, you know your country is growing in population, you know that your country is, even if it goes through a recession, you know it's going to recover because it always does, because it's America, right? Well, buying pieces of it is, in my way of thinking, the greatest, most reliable way to retire wealthy. And the reason why I want to talk about retirement, and if you call today, I'd especially love to get calls from people who are thinking about real estate for retirement. Not so much, if you want to call and talk about buying and flipping, that's fine. But I'm really inspired and passionate about people talking about retirement. Why? Because it's a 20, 30-year endeavor, right? So there's no short-term, get rich quick, short attention span nonsense in that strategy. It's all about something 10 or 20 or maybe even 30 or 40 years away, and you're automatically going to have patience. We're going to talk about using your IRA. Did you know you can use your IRA to buy real estate? Well, you can. Don't ask your financial advisor because he or she will tell you can't, but they're wrong. You can. So my motivation here today, and what we're going to talk about starting right after this next break, is specifically how I picked my favorite market in the country, how you can get comfortable in that market, and how you can actually execute that plan. So stay with us. You're listening to Rand on Real Estate on 77 WABC, brought to you by Jacksonville Wealth Builders. Back in a moment. Welcome back to Rand on Real Estate. I am Greg Rand, your host. This is 77 WABC and WABCRadio.com. Our number here is 800-848-WABC. My website is ownamerica.com, and we're going to talk about some things that I posted on ownamerica.com. I write a blog whenever I go on the air called The Show Prep, and the Show Prep is where I go and do research for the show, and I post up the graphics, and I post up the charts so that you can, if you're interested, go and check out visually what I'm talking about in your ears here. We're sponsored today by Jacksonville Wealth Builders. Their website is investmentpropertyjacksonville.com, and their phone number is 904-677-6777. And I'll tell you why you might want to call them. What they do There's a new industry emerging over the last several years. People who, like me, saw that on the other side of the housing crisis, there was going to be an investment boom, but also saw there's a whole lot of people out there who don't know how to do this and who aren't totally comfortable being a landlord. All right, so maybe you can relate to that. That I have an Uncle Richie. I know I can make a lot of money. I can build wealth over a lifetime in real estate, but I do not want to get that dreaded phone call about the roof leaking. I don't want to hear about, people always say the toilet overflowed, which is funny because nobody's going to call a landlord. It's an aside here, but nobody calls a landlord when the toilet overflows. They grab a plunger and they clean it up themselves. But it's just sort of an example that everybody conjures up of getting that middle of the night phone call from the tenant. The other reason is that you can't necessarily always buy near where you live because maybe the price points are too high. Now, what Jacksonville Wealth Builders do is they are a turnkey investment company. And I'm right now in the process. I converted my IRA over to what's called a self-directed IRA. That means that I can direct it myself instead of giving it over to a stockbroker. And by being a self-directed IRA holder, I can then own real estate in the IRA. It's an awesome thing because all the profits on the rents, all the appreciation, all of it grows tax deferred. And if you see that on a chart over 20 years, it's like a snowball building up wealth. And I'm working with Jacksonville Wealth Builders myself because what they do is they find properties, and I'll describe a few of them in the next segment. They find properties that need to get fixed up. They then fix them up. They then put a tenant into them, or they start looking for a tenant and they sell it to you and then shortly thereafter put a tenant in. They sign 2-year leases or longer with everybody. So you're literally buying a property that is all fixed up. They put a new roof in, they upgrade plumbing, they upgrade electric, they do appliances and kitchens if necessary, but all the real heavy-duty stuff, they do all brand new right up front. You buy the property, you have a tenant in place with a multi-year lease, and you get a return, and they manage the property. And so it's beautiful. They'll actually fly you down to Jacksonville to take a look at the neighborhoods, look at some of the properties they have available. It's a really, really impressive organization. I met one of the founders of it, Greg Cohen, and the rest is history now. We have a great relationship, and I feel very comfortable giving this advice to people that are relying on me for good advice because of the experience that I'm having with them personally and because of the market they serve. They are Jacksonville Wealth Builders. They're not going anyplace else. And I've actually asked him about whether he's going to expand to other cities, and he said no. And the reason is that he, just like me, thinks that Jacksonville's about the best story out there for investing in real estate. So let me tell you about that. And we got some calls lining up here. Stay on the line because we're going to get to you, I promise. But let me lay the groundwork for Jacksonville. Professional real estate investors think like the Home Depot. All right? They want to know, is population growing in that area? Are people moving there? Are they going to want to own real estate? Are they going to want to keep that real estate up, whether they be homeowners or investors? And is that going to be the case for decades upon decades to come? In other words, stand back and show me the big picture, the biggest of the big picture. Demographic trends, migration patterns, job growth. Give me all those things that tell me that populations are going to grow, because if population grows, demand for housing grows. People like living under a roof. They're funny that way, so they're going to need houses, and if the population is growing. So how do you gauge whether the population is growing? Well, first of all, look at migration patterns, okay? Where are people leaving from and where are they going to and why? And one of the biggest stories in the country for the last 30 or 40 years is the state of Florida. People from the population centers in the Northeast are filing down there. The recession is not slowing that down at all. In fact, it's accelerating that trend because the quality of life is better and the cost of living is lower in Florida. That's the entire state. But Jacksonville has something special going on. In addition to traditional demographic migration to the Sun Belt, Jacksonville has a port, and their port is expanding. Why? Because in 2014, on the 100-year anniversary of the original opening of the Panama Canal, they are expanding. They're finishing the expansion and cutting the ribbon on the expanded Panama Canal. Now, why is that important? Because the ships, the biggest ships in the world right now that are bringing stuff, mostly from Southeast Asia, most of it coming over to the U.S., they land in California and on the West Coast. And whatever of that stuff needs to get to the East Coast gets on trucks and trains and gets brought across the country that way. Why? Because those big, gigantic ships can't get through the Panama Canal. They're too big and the canal is too little. Well, that's what's changing. They call it post-Panamax, okay, the maximum that you can get through the Panama Canal. Those ships carry 3 times more cargo than the stuff they can get through there right now. So when they cut the ribbon in 2014, you're going to see a huge amount of cargo that used to land in the U.S. in like Long Beach, California. It's going to come through because it's cheaper and it's easier and it's faster to get to the East Coast to come all the way through the canal instead of taking it off in California. What does that mean? That means all the ports in the Gulf of Mexico and all the way up the East Coast have the opportunity to get all those new customers. And with all those new customers, all those new jobs. And of all those ports from, Houston, Texas, all the way across Tampa, up through Florida, up to, to Norfolk, Virginia, if you research it, the port that has done the best job of government cooperating with business and commerce to dig the port deeper, to add more infrastructure, to make it so that it is the most attractive place for all those new ships to land, Jacksonville's it. So with that, you see, this is a city that is the 13th largest city in the country by population, but it's much bigger than that by landmass. Okay, so it's not crowded at all. The average age in Jacksonville is 34 years old. Okay, younger than the national average. They have 2 Navy bases there. And one of the things that I've learned is that if you're in the Navy and you want to retire, you have a lot of say as to which base you retire at. And a lot of people choose the bases where there are going to be jobs for them to get after they retire. And in droves, they're choosing Jacksonville. So military folks coming in because when they retire, they want to get one of those new port jobs, the port expanding, all the services that are designed, that are needed to support all that expansion, all the companies that are moving into Jacksonville. Again, quality of life is through the roof. It's gorgeous weather. It's a beautiful place. Cost of living is low. The average price of a single-family home in Jacksonville is just above $100,000. You heard that right, just above $100,000. So you take all these things together, and what does it tell you? It tells you that because in addition to the natural growth of real estate markets by virtue of population growth, you have the added benefit of demographic trends and migration patterns coming down to the southeast. Then you have the hyper added benefit of the Panama Canal expansion, something that is happening. It's not a maybe, it's a definitely. And if you go to my website, ownamerica.com, you're going to see in that blog called Show Prep for May 13th radio show, I've got some links in there to some articles that'll give you a jumping off point for you to do your own research. As I said, I want to influence you, but I don't want you to take my word for it. I'm not a stockbroker who says, trust me. I'm saying, take a look at this. Okay, read a couple of articles, and you're going to be astounded by the billions of dollars that are being invested in Panama Canal and in Jacksonville to prepare for what is very likely to be a doubling of the population over the next 10 years. And again, they all want to live indoors. So when you've got a place like that, and then you add to that the fact that Jacksonville has gone through some pain in the last few years. We're very big on short-term pain coupled with long-term gain. When you can find those two things present in the same market, you've got a winner. You've got a place that all boats will rise with the tide, no pun intended. So I also have a chart on the blog that shows that Jacksonville's home prices have basically gone all the way back to where they were 10 years ago, which means the foreclosure crisis has impacted prices, which means you have upside. Jacksonville is a winner. When we get back from the break, we're going to take a couple of calls, and we're going to get into some case studies. This is Rand on Real Estate on 77 WABC, brought to you by Jacksonville Wealth Builders. Back in a moment. Welcome back to Rand on Real Estate. I'm Greg Rand, your host on 77 WABC and WABCRadio.com. The phones are ringing off the hook. I must have struck a chord here. So we're going to jump right to them. We've got Mark from Long Island talking about Florida. How you doing, Mark?
Hey, how are you?
Good, thanks. So what's on your mind?
I got a quick question for you. I'm looking to buy a short sale on the ocean in Singer Island in Florida. It's I guess a little bit north of West Palm Beach.
Right.
It's a resort area, and my partner and I can buy a unit there. It's oceanfront, a nice 2-bedroom unit. We have a tenant in there in place. The tenant will basically cover our maintenance and our taxes, but we won't get any return on the investment. It's about $250,000. The idea was we were just going to buy it in this market and hold it, for 15, 20 years, looking for appreciation. And I just wanted your thoughts on doing something like that.
Well, I think I touched on Florida in the last segment, where Florida, of all the states in the country, is my favorite because of the massive amount of shoreline and the vacuum of population from the Northeast. And so that whole Palm Beach area that you're talking about has gone through a really, really tough time. It's actually, the prices in most of those markets are down below where they were 10 years ago, which is rotten for folks who own real estate there, but fantastic for folks who are thinking about buying, because that's an overcorrection. Okay, that is something that is below. There's no reason in the world that home prices in Florida would be below where they were 10 years ago, except for the fact there was a whole heck of a lot of overdevelopment, over speculation, wild lending practices going on. And so we have an explainable crash of home prices, but they've gone now. I believe that you have almost automatic upside because the prices are below market value. Yes, market value is defined as what someone's willing to pay right now. But when you have a situation like this that is so isolated, so unusual, I think you've got upside. I don't mind, Mark, break-even properties, okay? I've bought investment properties that were break-even if I thought that the rent was going to be going up. And rental rates in Florida are. They're definitely going up. I mean, people who are coming out of short sales, for those in the audience that don't know what a short sale is, that means you're selling the property for less than the mortgage balance that you owe. So you're short at the closing, and the bank will usually let you off of that after a big negotiation. But the point is, those people need to live someplace. There are thousands and thousands of short sales going on in Florida, probably hundreds of them that are going on in the whole Palm Beach area right now. And every one of those people needs a place to live. And they usually want to live pretty darn close to where they used to live. In other words, they're selling the home not because they can't make the payment. They're selling the home because they're maybe $300,000 or $400,000 in some cases underwater on it. That's the hardship. But they've got good enough credit. They have jobs. They're very reliable risk in terms of a tenant. So I like it because you sound like a young guy, Mark. How old are you?
Not that young. I'm 49.
Well, I'm 44, so I think you're pretty young. What are you talking about?
Okay. Does it make sense, with all of the vacancies in Florida to, our thinking was if we got on the ocean, there's only, they can only develop it so much. It gives us a little bit more security. It costs more, obviously. The maintenance is more, but we think it lends itself to greater upside and less risk. Are you in that mindset?
Yeah, I
as
agree. Every market is different. Every unit is different. And when you're able to get one that has a view of the ocean, that's on the ocean, that's rare. I mean, $250,000. Who would have thought 5 years ago you could be on the southeast coast of Florida on the water for $250,000? It was practically unthinkable. And if you can get it, the vacancies are going to be a concern, but work really hard to get a good tenant. Check the background of the people, and from the standpoint of their credit. I don't mean do an FBI check, but check their credit, confirm their employment, make sure you have a good tenant, and don't sweat the break even because you know what? 2 years from now, you'll actually be able to raise that rent and generate a profit. And while I can't guarantee you appreciation, I can do as close as anybody could ever do to guarantee. Florida real estate is going to appreciate over the next 10 years. So if you've got that kind of a threshold in mind, I think you're going to do great.
Hey, thanks for the advice.
All right, thanks for the call, Mark. I appreciate it. We have another call here. This is Addie from White Plains, my hometown. How you doing, Addie?
Oh, fine. Thank you.
Thanks for calling. What's on your mind?
Well, I was expecting a call about the investment I made with Jacksonville Wealth Builders.
Yes, you're an investor with Jacksonville Wealth Builders. We had a conversation a couple of days back, and you said you were going to give a call. That's great to hear. So tell me about yourself. You bought a property in Jacksonville.
That's correct.
And what's the objective of that investment? Why'd you do it?
Well, it's for cash flow and something. So I'm retired now. And I don't want to run out of funds, for me to live on for the rest of my life. And so I got this investment opportunity, and I took advantage of it.
So you live here in the New York area. You live in the New York area. You bought in Jacksonville. How did it feel to buy a property 1,000 miles away from where you live? Did that make you nervous?
I was nervous. I was nervous at the beginning, but there are many people out there that would take advantage of somebody in my situation, and I was really afraid of that. But when I heard about the Jacksonville Wealth Builders, I was really fascinated by what they had to present, and I got in touch with them, and they've lived up to everything that they promised. In fact, they've delivered more than they promised me.
Now, how so? How did they deliver more?
Well, they told me, when I first contacted them, I didn't know anything about what they were going to present, what they were going to give me eventually. So when they promised me that they would fly me down to Jacksonville for me to take a look at the properties, at first I thought, I have to pay and go to Jack, but no, I didn't have to pay anything. They flew me down at their own cost, and I spent a whole day with them there. They took me around to see various properties that they were working on. Some that were building from scratch, from the ground up, and many that they were rehabbing to sell. And I picked one of them.
So now you mentioned that you're doing this, that you're already retired. We've been talking on the show about people who are planning on retiring, but you've actually, do you mind if I ask how old you are?
I'm 70.
70. All right, beautiful. All right, so it's never too late, right, to invest in Jacksonville. So that's, I detect a slight accent. Addie, where are you from originally?
I'm from Nigeria.
Nigeria. All right, beautiful. So now you're how long you lived in this country?
27, 28 years.
Okay, and you've chosen now because you want to make sure that, I mean, you're going to live another 30 years or 40 years, so you got to make sure you have enough money to live on, and you chose an income property. Did you pay cash for it?
Yes.
And how much are you getting?
I use my IRA, self-directed IRA.
You did? Okay, beautiful.
Yes.
So you're following exactly the plan that we're talking about here.
Yes.
What's great about it is that you actually didn't do it in your 30s or 40s. You're doing it now that you're 70.
Yeah, I wish I knew about this when I was in my 30s and 40s. Unfortunately, I didn't.
So do you mind if I ask you, and you don't have to tell me this, but how much did you buy? What was the price of the property, and how much are you making in your pocket after you pay all the expenses? How much are you making a month?
Well, I mean, this is quite recent. I got it only in February. I closed on it in February, and it cost me $86,000, and it rents for $950 a month, and I pay 9% of that to Jacksonville Wealth Builders for them to maintain it for me, to manage it for me. Right. Insurance is about $800 a year. So
if I math this up, you're basically making something along the lines of approaching a 10% return, right? It sounds like if you paid $80,000 and change for it, you're making about $8,000 a year on it now?
That's the potential, yes.
Okay, good. Good. All right, beautiful. Well, that's great to hear. You know, I'm glad that you called because, you know, the idea that you represent probably what I'm hoping a lot of people that are hearing this message represent, which is somebody who hasn't done it before, concerned about being outside the geography they're familiar with, but being able to actually go down there and then complete the transaction. And for you to validate Jacksonville Wealth Builders on the air here is great because I'm having a similar experience. I've just been working with them recently, but I find them to be incredibly above board, and their follow through in their system. It's a very tight system in terms of, you know, they show you properties that the replacing of the roofs, all those things are designed to give people like you and I who are 1,000 miles away a lot of comfort that things are being handled and that it's a stable investment. Yeah,
so you have that peace of mind. I mean, you have somebody reliable like Jacksonville Wealth Builders. Well, I would say go for it.
Okay, beautiful. Addie, thank you very, very much for the call. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
All right, when we get back from the break, I'm going to talk about a couple of specific properties that are down there that have recently closed and give you some numbers and some ideas of how much it would cost to buy them and how much return you could get. And we'll take some more calls. Our number here is 800-848-9222. Get in on the last segment. This is Randon Real Estate. Back in a moment. Welcome back to Randon Real Estate. I'm Greg Rand, your host on 77 WABC and WABCRadio.com. This hour is brought to you by Jacksonville Wealth Builders. They are at investmentpropertyjacksonville.com. That's investmentpropertyjacksonville.com, and their phone number is 904-677-6777. And we're talking about investing in Jacksonville. We're talking about using your IRA to invest in Jacksonville. We've got somebody on the line here who's got some experience with that marketplace. This is it's Jose from Jersey City. How you doing, Jose?
Very good. With God's graces. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Well, I'm telling you, better than what I deserve. Okay. I like to inform people the advice that you're giving to the rest of the people. It's great. Going into Jacksonville is the best thing that they can do right now. Because they offer all kind of opportunity. Like, for instance, like you said before, the port. I mean, they're just developing those sports. They're expanding NYK, hanging. All of these people are moving in there. And down the downtown area, where the other parts are, they are expanding the river. The river they developing that. I mean, that is great. I mean, also the airport in Jacksonville, one of the best airports they consider in the world.
I think Jacksonville Wealth Builders should hire you as their chief pitch man. You've got this down pat. You know, you mentioned something, Jose, that I want to just clarify for everybody. Jacksonville, if you look at the map, go on Google and search the map, you'll see that it's actually, there's a river, pretty big river that comes.
The St. John River
that comes down through, and so there's actually water on like all sides of Jacksonville.
Yeah, my property is waterfront, and the St. John River is one of the only rivers in the world that runs up from north. Yeah, all the rivers that roll down south, well, this one comes from the Orlando area, come back up. I mean, goes into the Maple area, where that big naval base. I mean, one of the largest naval bases right on the east coast of Florida. But also, what I like to tell them, inform the people, that they will not regret at all investing in Jacksonville.
So you're in Jersey City now, but you've got a house down there? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I have a house in Jacksonville for 27 years. When I initially bought the property, people, they were telling me, are you crazy? Are you out of your mind? But I knew this area. Look, Jacksonville is the largest town in the country. Territorial-wise, is the largest town in the country.
Yeah,
846 square miles.
Yeah, it's a huge landmass. It's 13th largest in population, but the largest in terms of landmass in the country. It's what's interesting also is that it's not. It's you know, the Southeast U.S. is the biggest growth region in the country, and the major cities down there, like Florida. People think of Florida and they think of some of those beautiful places: Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Miami. This is totally different. This is more like
go to Ponte Vedra. Ponte Vedra, one of the most beautiful golf area, right by Jacksonville Beach. I mean, then you go down 30 miles down the road, you go to the great St. Augustine that I love.
Right, the Golf Hall of Fame. Are you a golfer?
Once in a while I go for my 8 holes. Not once in a while. I'm not really crazy about it, but I have friends. Sometimes they take me, but the golf course in Ponte Vedra is, I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's world class in there. Let me ask you a question. So you've owned this house for 27 years, and it was worth quite a bit more 5 years ago than it is right now. How was it for you? Because, you know, the values in Jacksonville went up and they came back down again. How was it for you? I mean, did you stress out over that? Or tell me what it felt like to see that go up and then come back down
right
again.
Now, look, I haven't put too much attention to it. I remember when I bought it. I bought the house with a three-quarter of an acre, swimming pool, 4-bedroom, 2-car garage, and a nice front. I bought it for $78,000  27 years ago.
What do you think it's worth now?
I really don't know. When the prices were going up crazy, I believe it got up to the price of around $200,000.
Okay.
But then it took a dive.
Yep, and that's going to come back. Hey, Jose, listen, thank you very much. We're getting close to the end of our hour here. I really appreciate the call. Your enthusiasm is coming through loud and clear. Thank you for the call. I appreciate it. You know, you said something great, too. I'm really happy that he did, that he didn't care what it was worth in the last couple of years because that's not what this was about for him. He bought the place years ago. That's what happens when you have this really deeply rooted long-term view. When you're doing this for retirement or you're doing it for college funding or something, anything, if it's important to you, like both of those things are, and if you're thinking about decades out in the future, I have condos for my kids' college funds. I don't care they lost value because my kids aren't old enough to need the college fund yet. And so there's something really beautiful that happens when you anchor your goals to passionate outcomes that are a long ways away, is that you can ride the storms out without stressing out. Hey, Ralph from Brooklyn, how are you?
Hi, how you doing?
We got to be real fast here because the hour's almost up.
All right, I'll cut straight to the chase.
Thanks.
I'm living in Brooklyn. I'm considering investing in Newark, New Jersey. There's a little Portuguese enclave in there called Ironbound. You know anything about it?
I don't.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to. It seems like it's a place where the Portuguese and Brazilians who also speak Portuguese really want to live there. They call it Little Portugal there. So it's in high demand to this ethnic group. So they seem to bid up the prices residentially.
Well, you know, I don't know that particular neighborhood, Ralph, but I can tell you that you can become an expert on a little piece of dirt, and that little piece of dirt, meaning a town or a neighborhood, can make you very wealthy, and I love real estate for this reason, because this is one of the rare examples of where the little guy has the advantage. The big guys, like Warren Buffett recently said that he would like to go buy 10,000 single-family homes, but he can't. Now, Warren Buffett owns one of the biggest real estate companies in the country, but he doesn't feel that he can go and buy, because on the scale that he wants to do it on, it's too complicated, too much logistical, too much detail to deal with. The little guy like you and me, we have the ability to dig in, to research, to understand a community like that in a way where some people would say, oh, Newark scares me. I hear Newark's got high crime. I'm worried about Newark. I'm not sure if it's a good investment. But you found something within Newark that you know something about that even the so-called expert on the radio never heard of, okay? That's meaningful, because you can, there's a lot of really smart guys on Wall Street that got 15 TV screens around them all day, and if a CEO has a bad night's sleep, they find out about it and they sell the stock before the rest of us wake up in the morning. Not the same thing in real estate. You can become a real serious expert on some small community and then build a lot of wealth. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. I will look into it and check it out. And Ralph, if you want to email me, you can find me at ownamerica.com. That was a really cool call. Now, I'm down short on time, but I wanted to tell you about a couple of the properties that Jacksonville Wealth Builders recently packaged up and sold to investors. And there's a whole bunch of them I have in front of me here, and they all have a couple of things in common. They all sold for between $80,000 and $100,000. They're all producing, if you paid cash for them, after you pay your taxes, after you pay your insurance, after you pay Jacksonville Wealth Builders to maintain it for you, they're all generating between a 9 and 11% return. Now, that's just on the rent. So if we're talking about a stable investment here. You compare this to other stable investments, and you're like bonds, savings accounts. Show me something you can get a 10% return on based upon a signed lease, a contract with a tenant, 10% return, and that is not including any appreciation. So when you get a couple of percentage points appreciation per year, that 10% return becomes 12, 14, 16% returns when you count the cash flow and the rent. They've got them all day long down there. Call Jacksonville Wealth Builders at 904-677-6777 and go to investmentpropertyjacksonville.com. My name is Greg Grant. I hope you enjoyed this hour. I hope I delivered on the promise to make this something actionable, that you get motivated and inspired and excited, but also know a way to actually take action. You can see me at ownamerica.com, because my whole life is now dedicated to helping people own pieces of America to secure their financial future. You've been listening to Rand on Real Estate on 77 WABC. We're here the second Sunday. We're here all different kinds of times. So go to ownamerica.com and find out when we're going to be on the air. My name is Greg Rands. I really appreciate you being with me. Have a great rest of your weekend.